All right, what's going on, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be covering how your child should prepare for their next tournament. We're going into tournament season here in the summer, and so I figured this is the perfect time to come out with a video like this to help you guys just really plan out your summer and make sure your child is preparing for their tournaments appropriately, all with the intent long term to be able to play Division One golf. And if you're new to the channel, that's all we talk about here is helping junior golfers develop to play Division One golf. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We come out with videos like this every single week. And to be clear, none of this is saying that playing Division One golf is probable. Sometimes I get people mad at me who are like, oh, well, why isn't playing general college golf good enough? Or why isn't just playing golf for fun good enough? Like, if that's your thing, great. Go do that. You don't need to watch any of these videos, but if you want to have clarity on what your child needs to do to play Division One golf, this channel is going to help you do it. Pass down the lessons that I've learned from helping 7 junior golfers get recruited in the last 2 years, helping my average student improve by about 4 shots per year. So just passing down those lessons, do with it what you will. So I've got this laid out ahead of us. So first things first, your child should be playing in ranked junior golf scoreboard events if they want to play college golf. The reason for that is you're already playing a lot of events. I'm sure if you're watching a video like this or you're considering playing a lot of events, and if you know anything about tournaments, they're expensive. Not just the tournament cost, you got to do the practice round. You might have to travel. You might have to stay in a hotel. You got all sorts of stuff to do. And God forbid that you go to a tournament and it's not ranked and you didn't even know that wasn't ranked. And you're going into that tournament, your child's going to that tournament being like, I'm praying to God that I win this tournament or I do well in this and that it's going to matter. And the reality, it just doesn't do anything, right? So getting ranked is super important. That's not to dismiss tournaments that are not ranked. We can still use those strategically, but we want to use those strategically if we're going to use those, okay? And so we should be playing in events that are ranked, all right? How do you find that? Go to Junior Golf Scoreboard, Tournaments and Results, search for tournaments, and then go to your state and look up the tournaments that are available in your state that are ranked, okay? All you got to do is play in 4 of those to have an actual ranking. And that's just so valuable, not because it puts your child in some special spot. And this is true for them if they're 12, if they're 13, if they're 14. Not because it puts them in some special spot, not because you need to compare them to every other kid in the country. It allows you to say, hey, here's where we're at. In the same way you go to school, you get a GPA, it tells you how your child's doing, right? If your child's like, hey, I feel like I'm doing pretty well in math, and their teacher's like, yeah, they've got a C, you're like, okay, cool, you're not doing that great in math. We need to get better at math. We need to have some objectivity if we want to improve at stuff, right? And that's just like true universally. It's not like, oh, that only happens when we're good. That's how you become good at something. The same way it's like your child's 2 years old or 3 years old. You're going to get feedback from their teachers if they're in like preschool or something on how they're doing and what needs to be worked on at home, right? We need to have that so that your child progresses, right? Same thing's true for golf. That's how we get good at stuff. It's not something that happens after we're good. Okay, so feedback is important. Next thing we want to do is map the golf course. Very few people actually go through the effort of doing this. So the tool that I recommend for this is called Shot Pattern. I know some people like to use Blue Golf. I know some people like to use Google Earth. In my experience, this is just the best app for doing this. So hopefully you guys can see my screen here. The reason I love this app so much is there's plenty of different golf courses that you're able to look up. It's got a lot of diversity here. So, go ahead and download it. I think it's got like a free download. And so the cool thing here primarily is it's got this little arc. Hopefully you guys can kind of see that, where it's got this left to right arc. This is super valuable because when we're going to play a golf course that we've never played before, there's essentially 2 things there's really one core thing that's going to shoot us in the foot. But two things that we split them out. We do not know where to miss off the tee because we've never played the golf course before, right? We know what's going to happen on our home golf course, right? We play worse typically in tournaments than we do in practice, right? Maybe your child has that flipped around and they're a little bit more focused in tournaments. But for a lot of players, we struggle because we don't know the golf course as well, right? So we don't know where to bail off the tee. We want to know that ahead of time, right? We don't want to just wait until our practice round and we go hit a ball down there and be like, oh, I hit it good, it's fine. Like that's not useful for you, right? You want to go out there and say, okay, cool. I know what my targets are. maybe if there's something I didn't see on the map, then I can figure that out when I actually play my round. But we want to do this homework ahead of time. And this is something that's really easy to do. It takes like 15 minutes. You can do it with your child. If your child is mature and they're able to do this on their own, great. But this is what you want to be doing. And so the cool thing about this is this allows us to say, how big is your shot pattern off the tee? Because realistically, we want to have at least 70 yards from hazard to hazard. Okay. So that's out of bounds to out of bounds, or out of bounds to lateral hazard, things like that. Not considering trees, just actual hazards. Okay. Not considering bunkers either, just hazard. Okay. So we want to have that. And so we can actually toggle between these different arcs. So if we say, hey, I want to hit driver, I've got an 80-yard dispersion pattern, which is personally what mine is because I've actually measured it. We can say, hey, I want it to be 70 yards. I want it to be 60 yards. I want it to be 50 yards. And that makes sense if you go from like driver to 3-wood to 2-iron as an example, right? And so just to give you guys a little bit of goods here, if you're unsure, how big is my shot pattern? How big is my child's shot pattern? Go to their home golf course, look up their home golf course, and find a hole that's reasonably tight, okay? Where we're hitting driver pretty much every single time. And go in that hole and look at, okay, what's the furthest left that they ever hit it, where they've like made it decent enough swing, like not some like ridiculous, like they didn't top it, they didn't hit like some snap hook immediately or some crazy push slice. But just like, hey, they hit it reasonably good, maybe curved a little bit too much. What's the furthest left they hit it? What's the furthest right? Then have an arc that matches those two, that reaches to both of those points. That's essentially what their shot pattern looks like. Okay. And so you want to use that because then you can go on each individual hole and say, okay, well, how far are they going to hit it off the tee? Like for me, I hit it about 320-ish in Las Vegas. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2". I've got a good amount of club head speed. So I hit it 320. And so I can see 80 yards from here to here. I can tell you guys, I hit driver on this hole every single time. I don't really have any issues. I've had a bunch of times where I've flared this out to the right, and it'll just be like right here. I'm okay with that. I hit a fade. Every now and then I'll hit a pull, right? That's a little bit more rare for me. And so the way that I see this visually is I'm trying to start the ball down this left-hand side, and I've got the entire width of this hole in order to fade this ball. And I don't have to be that good at hitting my tee shots. A lot of times, one of the big mistakes I see with junior golfers is that they're trying to be really good off the tee, and they put a lot of pressure on that part of their game, and it just wears them down over the course of the round. They make one bad swing, and they make automatic double, right? Because they hit it out of bounds. Versus if you're able to do this ahead of time, you're taking one of the major obstacles out of play here. And it also allows us to, just be in a position where it's like, if we're in play off the tee consistently, then we're going to hit a lot more greens and we're going to score better. Okay. So this is well worth the homework of actually just doing this, and then have them note down either on a piece of paper or in their notes app on their phone is what club am I going to hit off each tee and where do I have to aim in order to be able to maximize my shot pattern. Okay. So that's the next thing we need to do. Now, once they've done that, we need to play a practice round, right? And so when we go out there in the practice round, I said, hey, the main thing we don't know is where to bail out off the tee. The other thing we don't know is where to bail out around the greens. So a lot of people do this thing where they hit the ball in play, and then they hit the ball in the green, and then they hit all these putts around the green. They try and like figure out where the hole's going to be. That is not what you want to do in a practice round. What you want to do in a practice round is figure out where the bailouts are off the tee. And then like we're validating what the homework we've already done. And then what we want to do is when we get up around the green, hit a couple putts. It doesn't really matter on the greens, because if you guys have ever played practice rounds before, you know that the greens are not the same speed in the tournaments as they are on the practice round. Right? We don't know that. They're not necessarily even going to be the same speed as they are on the practice green on the golf course, right? So that's irrelevant. We don't need to do that. Sure, we might want to have some awareness of it, but it doesn't really matter that much. What we want to know is, where can I bail out around the greens? Specifically, where can I get up and down to if I'm short-sighted? Think about that here for a second. Where can I get up and down to if I'm short-sighted? Okay. And so what you want to do there is, if the ball is 5 yards onto the green, so you can set that off, throw down a marker or a ghost hole or a tee or your car keys or something, and have your child pitch to those shots around the green, right? Those edges of the green. If they're not able to get up and down, or it's just like, hey, like this is impossible, then you can know, hey, I can't miss it there, right? Versus there's other spots where I'm going to be like, oh, this shot's super easy. It's like, okay, cool. We can miss it there. We want to make note of that. So we can say, hey, I know if I'm going to bail out on this hole, I need to miss it here. Or, on this hole, if I've got a front pan, I really can't miss long because there's a giant ridge. And if I fly it past the giant ridge, then I can't get up and down. So even though normally for a front pin, I want to miss it deep into the green, in this case, that doesn't apply because of this, kind of unique setup here. So I need to miss it short if I'm going to do that. Okay. That's what we want to be able to do in that practice round. We do not play the practice round for a score. I want to repeat that. We do not play the practice round for a score. I'm sure you've experienced this. You go to the tournament, your child plays a great round, and then they play a terrible round in the tournament. Why did that happen? Because all the information that they needed to collect in that practice round, they didn't collect, because good golf always looks the same. We don't need information to play good golf. Good golf is hit it and play, hit it on the green, 2-putt, go to the next hole. Or we don't the thing that happens with bad golf is I put myself in a bad situation and I need to manage, I need to mitigate the damage. Okay. And so we need to figure out where those bad situations are so we can avoid them. Most of playing high level golf is not having all the shots. It's avoiding shots we're not good at. Okay. And so an example of that, I'm sure you've seen this, your child, tries to go for it on par 5 and they end up in like a 30-yard bunker shot. And you might think to yourself, well, they need to practice that more. The reality here is they just need to avoid that bunker. It's like you would never hit the ball into a bush and be like, oh, well, I hope that I can, I need to go practice that shot. I need to put some golf balls in a bush and try to hit it out. No, it's like avoid the bush. It's like once you're in that situation, it's a loss. Either take the drop or figure out a way to get the ball out. But it's not something you're going to be good at. Okay. So we want to bias toward the shots we know that we've got. And part of that is going into the practice round and mapping that out ahead of time so we know what we're doing. Okay. The next thing here is a little bit of a two-parter. Your child needs to be tracking their statistics. And so this is the tool that I recommend. It's called Draw More Circles. We want to be tracking our tournament statistics. And ideally, we want to be looking at least 10 rounds of data. If your child hasn't played in at least 10 tournament rounds, then the mindset they need to have going into the tournament is essentially, hey, I want to see how I do in tournaments compared to practice. If they don't have any practice, they need to go log some practice realistically. They should log at least 5 rounds of practice to see, okay, cool, what are my actual statistics in practice? And then when they go play in tournaments, they need to play in at least 5 tournament rounds and say, how did these compare? So we can actually start to see gaps between, how many greens they're hitting in practice versus, tournaments. How often are they getting up and down versus tournaments versus practice? How often do they make birdie? How often do they 3-putt? Okay. So we can start to identify if there are any gaps. If they shoot the same, great. And then we need to be able to say, out of all these things, what's the main thing that needs to be improved? And so when I'm working with junior golfers, that's one of the primary things that I'm doing is going through the process of saying, okay, cool, we shoot these scores right now. What's going to have the biggest impact on our scores if we change this, right? A lot of times people say stuff like, oh, it's a short game. In my experience, depends on what you mean by that. So I agree and disagree with that sentiment at the same time. One of the biggest mistakes that junior golfers make that really hurts them is when they miss the green in regulation, they don't get that next shot onto the green so they can 2-putt for bogey. They try to get cute with it, and then they end up making double or triple or something like that. Okay. So in that sense, I agree. Short game is super impactful. It's super important. We need to be able to have solid carry numbers. Okay. But we do not want to look at that and say, hey, if I miss the green, I need to be able to get up and down all the time for par. That's realistically not something our short game can do. It's highly dependent on where we miss it around the greens, and it's highly dependent on our ability to make our shorter or even kind of medium length putts. Okay. And so long story short, when we're going to these tournaments, we want to have awareness of, out of all these things we can do, what's going to have the biggest impact, and then just focus on that. Okay. So if we go into a tournament, we identify, hey, the main thing is 3-putting. That's, in practice, I'm here. In tournaments, it's a huge drop off. Okay. When I go into a tournament, I don't care what I shoot. If I win, whatever, I just care about 3-putting. I want to eliminate the 3-putts, or I want to cut them down a little bit, right? If I have 4 3-putts per round, I want to get it down to 3. If I've got 3, I want to get it down to 2. If I've got 2, I want to get it down to 1, right? That's really how we want to be able to look at this. Once you're at 1, kind of hard to do 0. Obviously, it'd be nice. That's always a goal for all of us, is to avoid all 3-putts. But it's not as much of an issue. It's usually going to be some other problem, right? If your child has a tendency to hit balls out of bounds in tournaments, obviously mapping the golf course is a huge impact there. But then they're going into that tournament saying, okay, cool, I need to keep the ball in play. What are the strategic decisions when I'm uncertain that I can keep the ball in play so I can have more approaches to the green that have a chance of being a green in regulation? Obviously, that cuts down the bogey possibilities. It obviously takes the double out of play from the penalties. And then it also increases the birdie conversion possibilities, okay? So when they're going into that tournament, they should not be trying to shoot as best they can. Should not be. What they should be doing is saying, hey, I've got this main statistic that's going to have the biggest impact on my scores. I want to focus on that. I want to try to do that as much as possible. That's the mental focus. And so it's like, hey, you start off on the first hole, you miss the green, you make like triple. That shouldn't change your mentality of like, oh, well, now I've made triple, I got to go birdie the next hole. No, the mentality on the next hole is, all right, cool. We missed the green on the last one. We need to hit the green on this next one. That's it. That's all we care about. Because the thought process here is, if I hit as many greens as possible, I will score pretty much as well as possible. Okay. Aside from that, they should be trying to play to their statistics. They're not trying to beat their statistics except for in that one category. Everything else are just trying to play to their game. So if they have 1 3-putt per round, they can't be shocked when they have their 1 3-putt. This is what it is, right? It can't piss them off too much. It just needs to be, I'm playing to my numbers. Okay. Super, super important. We go in with that mentality. We're not concerned about what we shoot. We're not concerned about what everybody else shoots. This is how we actually have success in tournaments. Last piece here. Once we've played, we evaluate based off of our statistics. Okay. How do we do in this last round? So like within circles, we can actually, see a particular round and say, hey, for this last round that I played, how were my statistics compared to normal? Okay, cool. Greens regulation was not great here compared to normal, right? Is that a pattern, or is that something I really need to be concerned about here? And so obviously there's going to be variance. If I look at a better score here, we see a little bit, higher greens regulation, but still a little bit lower than normal. Scrambling is pretty good. Could be small greens, but these are all things that we want to be aware of here. Okay. And so those are really the keys here, because when we could look back at that tournament, we could say, hey, did I make progress on that thing that I was trying to make progress on? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, all right, cool. Continue to do that. We continue to push that until there's something else that's the main statistic we need to focus on, and then we can focus on that next statistic. But that's really the mentality that your child should approach their next tournament with, is actually make sure we're obviously playing in a tournament that matters, because otherwise all the anxieties, like, what's the point? Aside from that, though, map the golf course, play the practice round. It's always shocking to me, people who don't play practice rounds. Like, you need to play a practice round if you want to have any shot at doing well. Otherwise, just forget about trying to do good. Once you've done that, play to their statistics. If they're not already tracking their statistics, they need to do that. They need to be tracking their statistics so they know where they're at objectively, not just their opinion, right? There's so many junior golfers. They're like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. It's like, no, you don't. Like, as a coach who works with dozens of junior golfers who are at an elite level, your child does not know exactly what their issue is. If they did, they would be better. That's how it is. Okay. And then the last piece, go out there, play to their statistics, and evaluate how they did based off of those stats, not based off of like random anecdotal things. So hopefully this gave you a better perspective of how to prepare for that next tournament. If this is something you want more help with, not just tournament selection, but also how to prepare for this, and also just like how to develop their game overall, with the focal point of saying, hey, we want to play college golf. If that's something you're interested in, there's an application below. You can fill that out, and we'll look at your child's specific situation, see where they're at. If it's something that I can help you guys with, I'll walk you through what that would look like. And if I can't, I'll point you guys in the right direction for what you should be doing instead. So if you guys enjoyed this video, that is going to be profoundly valuable for you guys. So go ahead, check out that application down in the description. Or if you just want a little bit more help in tournaments, maybe you're not ready to talk to me or something like that, there's also a link below that'll just help you out with setting up your tournament schedule so you can understand my framework for that, whether you're just starting out, trying to play in ranked tournaments, trying to play in AJGA, or maybe you're even in the position where you're watching one of these videos and your child is trying to be one of the best players in the country. You're trying to figure out how to get into invitationals, covers all of those things. So anyway, links in the description. Otherwise, check out some other videos from the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, obviously give it a like, subscribe to the channel, helps push it out to people in the YouTube algorithm. So I will see you guys in the next one.